Hello and welcome to the PodStation from TrophiesonPSN. This is Kryptonite Dragon. Welcome, Dante.
Hello, I'm back again.
And yes, that was intro music, courtesy of Dante. He picked us up some tunes.
Yeah, my dad hooked me up with it on the mixing deck. I helped him out with it. Trimmed it down, and yeah, I thought it would be something that hopefully people will like. If they don't, tell us. We don't get offended. We'll go back to the drawing board and find something else to do. But yeah, it's kind of nice to have intro music for once.
Yeah, cool. All right, well let's get rolling. First off, it's Monday. We're doing our PodStation not live. Apologize for that. A lot under the weather over the weekend. Had a wonderful weekend, Dante, if you can imagine.
Yeah, I can. But you're feeling better today. That's the more important thing.
Yeah, feeling better. So, had a Need for Speed game night Saturday.
Yeah, how did that go? I sadly wasn't able to make it because I don't have a copy of the game on PS3, so I'm relying on you to tell me all the juicy details of everything that went on.
Well, it was a 100% turnout, but unfortunately there was very few that signed up for it. I don't know if that game's getting outdated and not too many people are playing it anymore. It was pretty fun. I can't say I'm very good at driving games, and I wasn't feeling too completely, I wasn't 100%, but regardless, I'm not very good at racing games anyway.
It's Need for Speed. You don't need to be good at it. You just need to be able to drive fast.
Yeah, well, I didn't have the online pass, so it wasn't much for upgrading cars and doing that stuff. And then, like Squill and Roche were able to take me down every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
I start moving forward, crash.
At least on the plus point going forward, you won't ever need an online pass for an EA game again. So.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I was really hoping to see some police cars and that kind of stuff in there too, which I guess they had in the last, what was it, Need for Speed Hot Pursuit had police cars.
Yeah, that was a couple of years ago though, because since then we had, Need for Speed, the Run, didn't we?
The Run, all that, yeah.
Yeah, but from what I gather, most wanted was kind of like Burnout meets Need for Speed. That's the impression I got playing it on the Vita, so...
Still, I can't imagine them getting rid of that, Need some police modes in there. You can get real creative with that. What's going on?
Well, who knows? I mean, from my understanding is that Criterion are working on another racing game for this year, and they've pretty much taken over the Need for Speed brand for EA. So who knows? We may even see that in a couple of weeks' time at E3 or something.
Yeah, maybe.
Fingers crossed. I'm kind of gutted that I missed it though. I'm just surprised that not many people turned up though, because a lot of people vote for it. I'm still fighting this battle to get Assassin's Creed 3 on the events calendar. I mean, come on, we all want to, it'd be great for taking out frustrations on both staff members and members when you can just pull off cool assassinations, and stuff like that. It'd be great for that. So,
True that.
All those people that voted for Need for Speed and didn't turn up, you should be ashamed.
For shame.
Or cast our digital audio eye on you with a scowl or something.
Cool. Yeah. Well, let me talk about what's going on around the site. You may notice some sitemap changes. We had some basically policy updates over the last few weeks. The privacy policy, the terms of service were updated, and we added an About Us page. Those are things again that are trying to help us work towards getting advertising on our site. We added some conditions and stuff that related directly to Google's AdSense and their use of cookies. They have a particular type of cookie that they use for those ads, but
chocolate chip?
No, they're called Dart cookies. It's some kind of double click cookie, but. Needless to say, some of those have been updated, and I'd appreciate if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. And then there's a little blurb about the About Us, which is really about myself, Nate, and Paul, the two programmers on the website. So stop in, take a look at that if you wish to. But going forward, we've got some stuff. Hopefully, in about a week, that'll be pretty exciting for the staff to see. Members probably won't understand it, but we're doing some stuff with a panel That should help out the staff greatly. So that's what's going on behind the scenes. You got a PSN pick of the week for us?
I do, yes.
Let's hear it.
Some people might be disappointed because it's a PS Vita game, but nevertheless, it's certainly worthy of your time and money if you have a PS Vita. It's called Jacob Jones and the Bigfoot Mystery. Buku Nishi did an article on this a couple of weeks ago, detailing the game, and it's actually a fantastic little game, to be honest. I was surprised to see it released so soon from when we actually heard about it. But it's done by a developer called Lucid, who are running a custom-built Unreal Engine 3 engine for, obviously, PS Vita, which is intriguing in itself that the Vita can actually run Unreal Engine 3, especially a custom one. So the game itself graphically looks great. In a nutshell, it looks fantastic. The rendering, the models of the characters all have this unique style, and to be honest with you, if you looked at it, you wouldn't be able to tell it's an Unreal 3 game. You generally, with Unreal games, you can tell they're an Unreal game.
Yeah,
with
they
this,
have a unique look.
With this, it's completely, you wouldn't be able to tell what the engine was that was powering it. But anyway, it's the first of several episodes for it, because it's actually the first episodic game on the Vita. And obviously until The Walking Dead launches later this summer.
Yeah.
Again, for the second time. But yeah, it's so episode 1's out now. You can buy that. It's around about, I think it's about €1.99 or £1. I think it's about £1.50. So I don't know, that'll be what, $3 in the States, something like that. And so yeah, so for the first episode, it's pretty cheap. It's going to give you a few hours of play. I'd say probably around about 4 to 5 hours mark. And essentially the story is about this kid, Jacob Jones, whose parents are scientists, but they've decided to drop him at a summer camp to help him engage with more people and, you know, get friends and stuff like that, because he's used to travelling on the road with his parents. And as you could probably tell, there's going to be all sorts of mysteries in there, and you probably meet Bigfoot, and you're trying to discover the mystery of it all. And yeah, it's quite intriguing because the story plays out as a hidden objects type of game. You know, when you go through cutscenes and you're trying to explore the campsite or on your way to other objectives, there's actually hidden objects that you need to click on the screen that are extremely well hidden. You do have to have a keen eye, but that's an interesting way of doing the hidden object type genre. It's kind of unique. I haven't really seen that before, where you're sort of walking down a corridor and then you know, on your way to something, and you're kind of looking for all these little things in the background, which actually is pretty fun to do. But the main core of the game is essentially to solve puzzles, and this will come as a result of having conversations and interactions with different characters within the game. So I don't want to go too far into it because I don't particularly want to spoil anything for everybody, because I do think it's a charming, fun little game that if you have a Vita, you really need to pick this game up, because it's just unique in so many ways, from the way it does puzzles and its storytelling to, you know, the hidden objects, its design and stuff. And, you know, for the price it is, it's a fantastic bargain. You know, sort of playing it, the more and more I play it, the more and more I feel like Lucid have done themselves a bit of a disservice, really, because I think, you know, if you had all 5 episodes of Jacob Jones and the Bigfoot Mystery and sold them for £20, you'd be getting your money's worth at £20. So, you know, the fact that you can pick up the first episode for like £1.50 is just an absolute bargain, and you should definitely go and check that out. I think we've already got someone working on a trophy guide for it. I think Clark's is working on a trophy guide. He was in the top 7 or 8 people to 100% the game and sync it up recently since it released. So We'll have some tips and things on how to solve the puzzles for that. But yeah, it's a great game, and I think people should definitely try it out. And I'd be intrigued to see that if it is successful on PS Vita, I can't see them not bringing a quirky little game to the PlayStation 3 platform.
Yeah. Huh. Cool.
But yeah, fantastic bargain. £1.59. Jacob Jones and the Bigfoot Mystery. Go buy it. It'll keep you busy, and you'll love it. You'll fall in love with it straight away.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that.
No worries.
All right. On to our main topic.
Yes.
You want to break us in?
We've sort of been discussing this for a while now. Yeah, we were originally going to do this last week, but we wanted to try and do something unique with it rather than just sort of say, right, here's the topic, let's just talk for like 2 hours on it and send everyone to sleep. So this week we're actually going to address a very important issue that faces both the industry and gamers themselves, which is obviously fanboyism. I think, especially now, we're going to see a lot more of that, given that, today Sony released a new PS4 teaser trailer, and you've got Microsoft, releasing the next Xbox 720 or whatever it's going to be called. And so now this discussion about fanboyism is going to become even more relevant, because I don't know if too many people remember the first time when we were sort of starting to talk about the Xbox 360, and then we were talking about PS3. For the first couple of years, I mean, God, how hostile was the internet to each other about that?
Yeah.
It's
got to one up the other.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as it was then, but it's still pretty rife around the internet. It surprises me how much people hate each other over just something as stupid as a different feature.
Yeah. I mean, that's really, you got to define it, because, one of the things for me is, like, understand that, like, I want to do an Xbox site as well, but it's very clear that because of fanboyism, I actually believe a separation is the best solution, because you really can't put Xbox and PlayStation people together for the majority of the time without getting just a lot of unnecessary comments on how one does not like the other's system, how their games are better, all these things that, some of it may have merit, but there's a point where it's like you can have the debate over the system, which features you like and all that stuff, but then when does it end? If you carry that on to every little discussion that you have for the remainder of your time on a forum, for example, like, what's the point? You're down the road, you've been playing it for a year, your favorite game comes out on both systems, and you go into a thread and start, tearing it apart on the other system, which you don't even have, or those kind of things. Most of the time it's almost like this blind belief that they've made a better decision, when ultimately most people don't know.
Yeah. And the worst thing is, as you say, it's one of these open-ended arguments, and nobody's ever going to truly outright win it. But you quite often don't see people agreeing to disagree and walking away and ending that conversation, and that surprises me quite a lot, that people will fight so furiously over things. The amount of times I've had discussions with people, who've said to me, I'm an idiot because I've got a PSV, it's not going to sell, it's going to die and stuff, and I just think to myself, you haven't even got the system, you've never even put it in your hands. But, at the same time, I'm not going to spend, days of my life trying to convince you otherwise that it's a fantastic system. Just that and I tend to end things like that with, well, I recommend you go play the system before you make any judgments. But to be fair, I mean, I think most systems on the market all have their unique feature sets and selling points. It just depends on how it's relevant to you.
Yeah.
As a gamer, I think that's what we've seen, a lot of people forget in this day and age. I don't know if that's because of the maturity of the audiences that games consoles are aimed at these days, or I don't know where would you start sort of placing part of the blame as to why it's such a rife thing across the internet.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to be said about people feeling secure in their decisions, and what it relates to is most people are not going to end up with both systems, and if they do, they're more likely to find something they're comfortable with, which usually amounts to the one that they tried first. For the most part, you can find people that own an Xbox and they get used to it. I've heard many people say that controller is the best, and then other people say, well, that's, you know, too big for my hands, and I'm used to the PlayStation. But largely, it's related to people's need to feel that they made a good purchasing decision, or something that they got used to. Because I've played an Xbox. I didn't play an Xbox and go, oh my gosh, this is so much different. The PS3 is so much better. I can't play this. I don't like it. It's one of those things, like, I didn't buy that system. If I did, and had unlimited resources, I buy that. I buy every game for it. I'd probably play both. I'd probably play them all the time. It's not a matter of one being better than the other. It's a matter of, there's a variety of different games, and what I'm used to.
Yeah, well, I have a fair bit of experience with Xbox 360 myself, and to be honest with you, I don't care how good the games are. The one turning point off for me is the controller. I just can't get to grips to it, and it actually is painful to use that controller.
Yeah.
And that's purely my decision as to why I don't buy it. I just totally feel uncomfortable. There's games that I've played, places like Eurogamer and stuff, and I've been kind of forced to use an Xbox 360 controller because they're not showing it on any other platform, and it's so frustrating because, take, for example, one of the games I tried a while back was Ghost Recon, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon, and I found that a nightmare to play just with the controller. But if people, but at the same time, I would say to people, if you like the controller, your controller isn't any better than mine. It's just mine's better for me personally because it doesn't hurt when I play it. I feel comfortable with it because the sticks are in the right place for me personally. The controller doesn't feel like it's gonna, ache, and if I drop it on my foot or something, I'm not gonna have a broken foot. All those kinds of things. But I have, respect to people that, if they want to go down that route with a different system, that's fair enough.
And there is, of course, the possibility of getting a PlayStation controller that works on an Xbox. I'm not sure if you were aware of that.
No, I know, and it's vice versa. But I'll be honest with you, that's pure laziness on my part. I just think it's too much effort. Really, do you know what I mean? To go and have to find and source somewhere that actually sells, a PlayStation type controller for the 360. And if I'm honest, when I have looked at other third-party controllers, because obviously the main manufacturers aren't going to do it themselves, it tends to be the other way round. You don't see very many, if any, PlayStation for the 360 controllers, but you see a lot of 360 controllers that are compatible with PlayStation.
Yeah. They're bigger. It's easier to fit the controls inside of them. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said about people's choices, and another thing that drastically smacks me in the face, and I've brought this up before, is some of the sales people from various stores. And some of the personal fanboyism I have seen, and some of the things that still go on, and the things that they highlight, and it's a virtual cornucopia of opinions. And locally, I ran into some pretty big Xbox fanboyism, to the point I had an employee from a popular game company basically interrupt a conversation I was having with a woman, that I was discussing the pros and cons of both systems, to just spew a bunch of Xbox fanboyism BS. Right in the middle of the store. It was absolutely crazy, off the scale fanboyism. It was, Xbox is better at this, Xbox is better, and it was all opinion. And anything I tried to do to, point out any negatives about the Xbox were quickly met with, distracting redirects. So
Yeah.
it's one of those things. It's like, most people probably, if you called around for an opinion, you'd be greatly shocked at the responses. And so actually that's one of the things I did. I called around. I got some opinions from various game stores to kind of get my head around where they're leaning right now.
Yeah.
And I was actually surprised.
Yeah.
One of the things I would say is it didn't direct as much towards Xbox fanboyism as I would thought.
Yeah.
There was actually a little bit of PS3 fanboyism mixed in there, and
For a change.
for a change. And the other thing that caught my attention is not mentioning some of the key points about things. No matter what questions you ask, there were certain things that were suspect in a lot of the responses.
Truth was stretched a little.
If you went and asked about the online and directly asked about that, most stores are not going to tell you about there's two things. For the PS3, it's cross game chat. Most people aren't going to talk about the fact that Xbox has that and PlayStation doesn't. And then Xbox Gold, the online Xbox Live for online play. About that cost.
Just thinking back to some of the ones I listened to, the one thing that probably really surprises me is the very little in terms of questioning you, the customer, because you were ringing up asking the questions, but then in order to make the best recommendation for you, obviously they only had the information that you were giving them from your question. And they didn't seem to want to, and this was prevalent on a lot of the calls, that they didn't seem too interested in terms of, if any of the systems were right for you and what exactly it was you wanted it for. Because then they could then say, well, yes, we do have two different versions, but we think this one will be suited because you've already told us what it is that you want it for.
Mm-hmm. And I played
really
dumb.
Shocked me.
I played dumb on my part. I think that's probably the best way to approach this, because in particular that conversation that I had with the woman in the store that turned into a fanboy rant was from a person that was looking to buy a system that had no idea about the types of games. Because one of the things that does happen is you'll get, what type of games do you play? Well, what if I don't play games? What if you're directing me and is the Xbox on special that week? Is that what you should direct me to, or should it be factual stuff that relates to it? And what are most people going to care about? They're going to care about costs, frequent updates. What kind of things I get as extras or hidden costs. Those are the kind of things that they want to know. What's the cheapest base model? Better graphics.
Yeah. Well, I have to admit, if it was me on the other end of the phone, one of the first questions I would ask is, do you have any experience with games at all?
Who's this for? Those kind of things.
Yeah. Have you had any experience with games? Is there any particular games that you may have seen on TV adverts that have caught your attention that you'd like to have find out more about and so on like that? And none of the calls did that at all.
Yeah, I mean here in the U.S. the Xbox has largely there's a large underage user base for the Xbox. There really is, and one of the things I think is important is what kind of things, what kind of games and stuff that your kid, if you're buying it for your kid, what kind of games are their friends playing? Are they playing on the Xbox? It might not even be a matter of coming down to it. If you think your average kid, you might want to say to a person, hey, do all his friends have Xboxes, in other words, because that's what he's going to want. He's not going to care which one's better. He's not going to care what you think about which one's better or what games are on it. He's going to want to play with his friends.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that that make more
Do
sense.
do you think then, in some respect, that looking back on some of the calls, which we'll get to shortly, but do you think in that respect then that's a little disrespectful from the people that you spoke to, because essentially they in some respect were treating you like you were one of those underage kids, in terms of they were trying to sell the feature list, but really in essence they didn't care because they were trying to sell it like you know you don't want to necessarily have this system because all your mates are not going to be playing it and your kids' mates are not going to be playing it. So do you think maybe they sort of got lost in that a little bit?
Well, I think I'm more of a believer in answering your customers' questions. If somebody comes in and they say list some pros and cons, I think you should list some major pros and cons. I don't think you should go off onto they're the same, but this is this here's one of my favorites. The Xbox originally had reliability issues. Okay. So it originally had. What does it have to do with now? What's the point of even mentioning it? Are you trying to help me figure out which one, to get? Are you saying they're about evenly reliable, but it used to have a problem, so I have to be on the lookout in the future? There's a lot of things like that, and even to the point of like I've just had some that I just literally was trying to drag out. I'm like, do I have to buy a new update every year? Well, yeah. There's a new update comes out every year. They have a new system. They have a Slim. They have a this model and that model. And really, it made me feel like if I was somebody that was knowledgeable, I could literally be thinking every year I got to buy a new PS3. You
Yeah.
know, I was literally thinking like that, like trying to put myself in the customer's shoes of, give me some information here.
Yeah.
And these people kind of ran with it, like, well, yeah, there's a new PS3 came out last year, and it's the Slim, and now there's a Super Slim, and I could literally be thinking, well, I don't want to get that system,
Yeah,
because
and I mean the slim and the super slim thing wasn't even relevant because at the end of the day it's still a PS3. Do you know what I
exactly.
mean? I don't know
To
why they threw that in.
right up to the new systems are coming out at the end of the year. There's not a lot of games for them coming out. It's a bad year to buy a console. I had somebody actually say it's a bad year.
Yeah. Which is
um,
is really not not the truth at all. Actually, it's a great year to buy it. You know.
yeah, it's one of these things like the opinions were mixed, the information was mixed, but I don't feel that too many actually really gave you a strong base of like what to look for, some things that really matter.
And do you know what the worst part of all of this is? Is that it wasn't even like we'd rung people or checked forums or anything like that, and gone round the internet to see where some of the fanboyism was coming from. We actually, you actually spoke to, a company where their business is to sell these things. And, it shocks me, right? I can understand it being in a forum on a website, especially if their website's tailored to those particular audiences, so it's a PS3 website or it's an Xbox website. I can understand some of the fanboyism. I may not necessarily agree with it. I may find it a little immature sometimes. But to hear some of it coming from a company where your bread and butter is selling any system that is right for the customer is just astounding. I'm not saying that these employees shouldn't have opinions and stuff, but does their opinion really matter in the grand scheme of things when really what they should be doing is finding out exactly what the customer wants, more than, what their opinion is on a system.
hmm
Unless, of course, the customer asks for an opinion on the system, in which case it's slightly different, but yeah.
Yeah, I did run into a lot of a lot of variety of things. I did find, I think the Blu-ray gets a lot of credit, and as well as Xbox Live, a lot of people had a lot of really good things to say about it, particularly to kind of offset. Well, it does cost, but you get more online features. It's monitored more. Xbox is more towards adult games, shooters, where PS3 is a quote unquote family friendly library. So you get.
We all know that's not true.
So it's one of those things like there's a lot to be said about these things peeking through no matter what. But
You
let's
know,
listen.
I'd love to see. I'd like to see. Have you ever watched one of those programs, the Undercover Boss programs?
Oh yeah, have them go in and
Yeah, I'd love to see them do that with this particular company, and because I'd love to see the shock of it. Do you know what I mean? It's
and I
just like the
had,
way they handle them.
even more entertaining. I had a few people. I called about 10 or 12. I've got about what did I put up about 8 recordings for you to listen to, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had a few of them that were like self-proclaimed, like, oh, I'm a fan of the Xbox, or oh, what was the other one? I'm a PS3 or Sony fangirl or something like that. Right from the start, it's let me tell you, I'm on this team.
Yeah, yeah.
you know. So, I don't know. I get the opinion that corporate-wise, they probably do not have any kind of policy on, anything like that. So,
Do you think they need one?
maybe a little bit. Maybe
Yeah.
to the point of like, some factual stuff that they should state and not, I
'Cause I
certainly
think,
don't want anybody telling me, you're an idiot if you think the PS3 is better than the Xbox.
yeah.
You know.
I think the core thing with it though is that I think it's terrible that a lot of these businesses are selling products based on employees' opinions rather, as I said before, rather than what the customer necessarily wants. And I've had in my employment history, I've done a lot of sales-based stuff. And I can honestly say, whenever I've done that, my opinions never counted for crap. Because at the end of the day, that's not, I'm not selling things based on my opinion. I'm selling a product and, I'm there to answer customers' questions and, make them feel reassured about their purchases, not to sell them something that they may or may not want based on my opinion.
Well, that's why I say they should think about it from the customer standpoint. They should be reliable with their information. If they don't know, or you shouldn't be afraid to say that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
The other thing is like pointing out certain hazards. Like we talked about the stickers before on something where the online, maybe the server's closing or is closed.
Yeah.
You see a customer pick up that, you should say that. You should be like, hey, I'll let you know, blah blah
Yeah.
blah. Right up to the point of, hey boss, are we going to discount this? Are you aware that the online server's closed for this game now? It shouldn't be selling for $15. Maybe we should price it down to 10. Push that up the line, see what you think. Think about the customer and think about, the kind of questions that they should want to know the answer to, even if they don't know to ask the question. Because, if you spew fanboy and somebody's going to go and they're going to learn on their own and maybe, hey, he told me that this was better and I don't think it is.
Do you know what I have never seen when I've gone into a game shop? Interestingly enough, now that we mention that, is that I've never seen an explanation of an online pass actually put up on a poster anywhere.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
it gets a bit confusing, I guess, because if you don't know what an online pass is, and then you go to the counter with this game, and they start talking to you about the online pass when you're actually looking to purchase it, as you say, if you're not necessarily familiar with them, I mean, look at Garcia, for example. He's not necessarily familiar with online passes. So can you imagine what it'd be like if you took a game up that needed an online pass, and then you just want to buy the game and get out there, and then someone starts spewing all this information that you may need to pay for extra. And you just think, wouldn't it be easier for the staff and the people that, you stick a sticker on the box that says, may require online pass, see poster.
Yeah.
Or ask for more info, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you made me realize another one I had, Call of Duty, where you had the season pass where you got all the map packs and stuff before. And yet another store, not specifically a game store, but something much larger, nationwide chain. An employee told me that was the only time I could buy the map packs and all that other stuff. Basically told me that no, once this promotion's over and the game is released, you can no longer buy a subscription. So, I've seen different sides of it, and some of it's coming from an uneducated stance, but others it's just like, oh, come
Yeah.
on, really?
This is why I kind of dread the days of us reverting to supermarkets for games. That scares me.
You mean the death of the brick and mortar and
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It would scare me to go into a
Well,
supermarket,
and
go
you
to
say
their
that
entertainment
there
counter
was
and
a
ask them.
there was a uh, video store nearby that had a game store attached to it, and that's where I used to find the most reliable information. And there was somebody in there that was probably too nice. I used to get advanced copies of games, um, and it was one of those things like I can remember going in there and him actually asking me, "What kind of games are you playing lately?" And I think that was one of the most powerful things and questions that were asked of me was
Yeah,
like, "What are you playing lately?" And I would talk about my games and stuff, and he would kind of listen. And he would go, "Oh, you'd probably like this then." And it
yeah,
was it was nothing about systems. It was nothing about any of that. It was more based on like, "Oh, that's what you're into. Okay, well, this is similar
yeah,
to that."
yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the more powerful tools that an employee could use to generate sales and to become kind of like the source of information. So
Yeah. So, thinking about this sort of overall, looking at it from a company and employee's perspective when it comes to fanboyism, do you think that some of the passion's gone from actually selling games? Because as you say, back in the day, whenever I used to go into a game shop, you'd have, in-depth discussions about the latest games and what you're looking forward to and stuff. And nowadays, it's like, here's my opinion on what, you know, this system sucks, that one's great, this game's better on that platform. Um, and there's no communication. It's like their opinions are forced upon you.
yeah, I
And
don't know.
so
I
that
think
that makes me sort of think, well, are the people that they're employing actually really all that passionate about games?
well, you notice too. Well, I mean, you don't have the same system. You can't really call your local shop there, and we discussed that. But one of the things that I have noticed, when I have called, is there's a large kind of divergence in the way employees are answering the phone. Um, there seems to be this push a lot lately here, at least here in the U.S. I don't know if it's worldwide, but used games and deals on used games. A lot of these game-specific shops are like you call and it's like just this ramble of we have 30% off of used games this week, 30% extra. If you're a member of such and such club, you get an extra 10% and blah, blah, blah. And you're just sitting there like, I don't even know what you're talking about. You're
Yeah,
talking about specific titles and you say, shooters on PS3, you get an extra 10% this week kind of thing. Like you're just like, for what? Trade in? What
yeah,
And it's like this. I get emails still the same thing. I get emails all the time from various clubs and stuff that I'm signed up for to hear about deals and specials and whatnot, and it's completely off the charts lately. They want used games. The percentage that they give you if you're buying something specific that's coming out, they'll often give you more of a percentage. If it's specific games that are on a list, you'll get even more percentage. If it's on Thursdays, it might be double percentage, cash back, whatever, towards a purchase. And you're just like, it's a maze. It's a
yeah.
maze. It's a minefield trying
And
to
the
figure that
worst
out.
thing about that is even with the increased price, even with the increased percentage, you're still getting screwed.
Yeah.
I think that's the worst part for me when I get those emails through. I look at it and think, right, 10% off £7. You know, so I'm going to get an extra £2.50 on a game that came out 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, that's where you sell it on eBay, and you
Yeah.
sell your $60 game for 40, and you pay $10 in fees, and you make a little bit more than what you would get taking to
I
taking to the game store.
think that's definitely the way forward with that. But um, so should we just explain? Obviously, you did do these calls during the week.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is going to play them one at a time and just offer our thoughts on each one afterwards. And I think we've got about 3 or 4 of them to get through. So we're going to mix it up a little bit, as I say, give our thoughts after each one, and then sum it all up at the end, I think.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, let's listen to that first one.
Yeah.
It's actually the second call I made. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to get an idea of like which console is better. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit between the PS3 and Xbox, like which one I should look at getting.
That completely depends on, so we have 3 different categories that I would always look at. I would look at online gameplay, exclusives, and memory space. So out of the 3, which are more important to you?
Well, I don't know. I guess a good selection of games is pretty important, but also, cost. Like, is the one that's better graphics or cost less or, like, more reliable?
Okay, so the biggest difference between Xbox and PS3 is that PS3 discs are actually made of Blu-ray, so they're practically indestructible, while Xbox discs, they are actually a little bit more sensitive. Like, if you knock over your system, which we would encourage you not to do, of course, but if it happens to knock over, there's a very good chance that your system will get a ring on the disc, and it will not be good. However, I will say that I do appreciate the games a little bit more on Xbox because they do have the Kinect attachment. The Kinect does have really good games with it. Versus the PS3 that does have a really good like RPGs that are available, such as like Hootie, Uncharted, things like that. So it's just like depends on your game taste. I personally do enjoy using my Xbox a little bit more because I do like to set up the controller better. The PS3 controller is kind of funny. So if you're into using like doing first-person shooters and stuff like that, you're probably gonna have a little harder time using the PS3 controller because of the way the controller's set up. Also, as far as cost, the Xbox does cost less. But in the sense that, like, say you wanted to get like the 4 gig Xbox, that's $179.99, but 4 gigs is not a lot of space. Versus the cheapest one that we have for our PlayStations, which are they're beyond $219.99, but they have 60 gigs of space. So it's kind of a toss up because like if you get like the 250 gig Xbox, it's $229.99. So it's like $10 more for like 3 times the space. So it really just depends on what you grab.
Okay. What about any extras or hidden costs or anything like that?
There are no hidden costs. We are not one of those underhanded sneaky. The only thing that I could say would be extra would be, I think, like Xbox Live, which is for playing online, using apps such as Netflix, blah, blah, blah. But Xbox Live is actually kind of substantial. If you want to play with your friends, if you want to hang out and stuff with your Xbox Live is $9.99 a month, and you can get a 3-month pack for $249.99, or you can get a whole year for $60. But it's entirely optional. You can still do all your one-player stuff, which is free, it doesn't really matter. Versus the PS3, you can play online and whatever for free. However, they do have PSN is a little less secure than Microsoft. And also, they have...
Like for hackers?
Yeah.
So I can get my stuff hacked. So I can pay for Xbox, but it's more secure than like PlayStation.
Well, here's the biggest difference is that PlayStation, they have this thing called PlayStation Plus. So PlayStation Plus, they give you, I think, 1 free game a month that you can choose from, and that does cost us $17.99 for 3 months or $49.99 for a year. So it is a big difference. They have upped their security a little bit, but everybody's still kind of freaked out about the big PSN hack that happened a couple years ago.
Okay. Now there's new models come out every year, right? So I just have to buy a new model of Xbox or PlayStation or something like that every year. Is that how that works?
Well, here's the thing. Now, you kind of called it a bad year because the new systems are actually coming out. They're coming out with PS4 and Xbox Infinity by the holiday season. That does not mean, however, that you should be like, oh, nope, I'm not getting the thing. Nope, no, don't do that because they're not going to have a lot of games out for it yet, and it's going to cost buku money, especially the PS4. So, I would suggest going ahead and getting one of the newer-ish models for the Xbox. Like, if you're going to get an Xbox, do not get the white one. always go for the Slim, and we have a lot of Slims. And if you're going to get the PS3, do not get the fat one. Get the Slim one, but don't get the Super Slim because the Super Slim is cheap.
Okay. All right, cool beans. Thanks for the help.
So
Listening to that is just so full of face palm. It's unreal. What I will say is fair play to her. She sounded like she'd been on about 40 Red Bulls the night before or something. It was proper excited, but...
Yeah, I got a lot out of that one. Yeah, it's a bad year. It's a bad year to buy. The PS4 is going to cost buku bucks.
I will ask you this, right, because you made this call, right? Do you actually feel like she actually took on board what you said and answered any of your questions? Because listening back over it, I don't think that was the case at all.
I think that was just interjected a lot. And I think, starting off with the PS3 Blu-ray being indestructible, that was,
Where do you go from there?
virtually indestructible. Like, you're going to sit there and shake it, to even say that stuff, and they recommend you don't knock it over and all that. So that's great. They recommend that. I found that call to be, one of my favorites because it was so like, what are you talking about? Gonna get hacked? So you can imagine, we know I'm not, I know a little bit about the PS4 and the Xbox, so you can imagine, put yourself in that position if you're a person calling and you legitimately don't know and you get that kind of information. Your head's spinning. The Blu-ray's indestructible. The Kinect's got better games. Controllers are better. It's a bad year to buy. There's new ones coming out.
So many.
I have to buy a new one every year. Well, yeah, don't buy the white Slim. Don't buy the, this and that. Don't buy the fat PS3. I'm like, I can imagine someone being like, huh? You would hang up that call like, okay, I've decided not to get a system because I don't know what the hell any of it's about. This is out of my league.
Yeah.
I'm going over to get a Wii. I'll be right there to buy a Wii U. Thank you.
It's funny that because she didn't even mention the Wii.
Yeah, I found the Wii being mentioned very few times. There were a couple instances. I had a few that asked me about, children, like who's going to be playing on it, because you shouldn't just assume that I'm calling for myself.
Yeah.
Unless I specifically say that. There are times where I said, hey, I've got 5 kids, all different ages. And I did have some people say, well, maybe the Wii is a better choice. So kudos to those people for catching that. But at the same time, that's probably one of the most confusing calls. She had a lot of energy. She wanted to just spew a lot of information, but unfortunately most of it was irrelevant,
misguided,
far-fetched, not to the point.
And then it's worse. I think the worst thing is if I was calling up from Sony or Microsoft, as a mystery shopper or something, telephone shopper, I'd be appalled at that because some of the information on that was terrible. It's not even true. And you think about the PSN hack. How was that even relevant to your decision to buying the system or not? We all know that's been done and dusted for a long while now. It's been in all the major newspapers. Everybody knows that PSN is now a secure thing. And the worst thing is that, even though PSN suffered the major hack that closed down the service for 6 weeks, the service was free. Not that makes it okay, but it's free. And since then, the security's been bolstered up. What I didn't hear anything about was the constant hacking of Xbox Live accounts, which we all know goes on, especially with things like EA's FIFA series on Xbox. The hacking on that is terrible, yet doesn't get the same sort of media coverage, and yet that wasn't even mentioned. If you're going to mention the flaws in one, you kind of got to mention the flaws in the other.
Yeah. Definitely a weird one. So, but at least we have the indestructible Blu-ray, so in case we want to knock the system over and all that. But it's not recommended that you do that. Remember out there.
Just in case I want to throw my Blu-ray drive at my Xbox.
Should we put a disclaimer in the... See below the video for a disclaimer about how to handle your system. Before we move on, too, I just want to say that for anyone that has any questions, yes, I am allowed where I'm at to record the conversation if I am a party to it. So, I want to point that out before we go any further. None of these should have any names or identifying things on who they are. So, so point that out, too. We're not doing this to pick at any particular person or company. It's a general overview of fanboyism. So.
Or fanboyism in the workplace, but we'll go on to the other stuff after we've done the call. So
All right, on to the next one.
Yeah, bring it on. Let's have a listen and a giggle.
Well, price-wise, for the most part, to get the same quality of system, you're going to be spending probably around the same amount. They're both on average about $300 if you go with having everything that's available. The Xbox, you can get a cheaper version with less memory for $200, but I would recommend getting the one for $300 because it has more memory. There's also some PlayStations with less memory that are cheaper as well. When it comes to which has better graphics, for the most part, they're about the same. The Xbox has consistently put out probably more games that run on a higher resolution. Everything that the Xbox has is 1080p resolution, whereas in not every PlayStation 3 game runs at 1080p. Some are at 720p. When it comes to reliability, they're both about the same. You can always buy 1 or 2 years extended warranties through GameStop on either system. Okay. Are there any hidden costs or anything associated with any of them? Add-ons and stuff like that? Well, it's really up to the gamer. There's really no hidden cost, but there's lots of ways of spending extra money. You can pay for subscription, for online gaming and things like that. You can buy additional content for your games off the internet and download. There are services you can pay for, but they're not required. Okay. Alright, well, how often do new models come out? There are new models come out for these every year, right? No, you have slight changes every once in a while with, different size hard drives or a different bundle with maybe some different games that come bundled with it. But it's usually 5 or 6 years between these systems. Okay. It's been about 5 or 6 years since the PS3 and 360 came out, so there will be new systems coming out this holiday season. But they won't be discontinuing the current systems for another 5 years. Most systems usually have about a 10-year lifespan before they become totally obsolete. Okay, cool.
So there we have one that, unfortunately something slipped in there, but we have somebody talking about reliability. They mentioned the Xbox. This is one that I found odd because you saw me kind of trying to draw it out about new systems, and you would think it'd be appropriate at this point that most employees would know about, like, what's coming out, to mention that, to say, there's a new Xbox release and PS4 coming out. Some of the places I called were handedly mentioning, hey, we'll know more after, Tuesday, May 21st. And if those employees have enough, information to say that, you would think that, when I'm asking about when new models come out and stuff like that, that would be a relevant thing to mention. So.
Well, I don't know. From my perspective, I'd say there is a lot of speculation going on, but how quick it would raise another question in terms of when you're talking to the customer, it's like, well, how soon do you want to buy a system? Before mentioning all the other things, it's like, because for all they know, you might want to buy it in a couple of months' time, or you might want to buy it now. You didn't make that clear, but they didn't ask either.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And it's like, I'm shocked that, even... I will say his saving grace was, when you asked about the extra costs, he was a little loose on it, but he did make a very compelling point, which was, the extra costs, essentially down to the gamer. when he was right there, but then, he probably should have expanded a little bit more on, by asking you some questions about whether you want to play online and stuff, and whether you would consider that an extra cost. But, his one saving grace out there, I will say, is that he was right. The extra cost does come down to how you game and want to be, what you want to do as a gamer.
Do you think there should be? You think they should make the assumption that you're wanting to hear about online? Don't you think that that's kind of like almost a given?
Yeah, I do think it is, but I think it's all right saying, well, as I say, he was right in terms of it is down to the gamer in terms of the extra cost. He just didn't expand on it enough. He didn't find out what type of gamer you actually are, and whether you want to play online. To then say to you, well, as a gamer, you're probably going to want this.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? And it gives you something to consider with your overall purchase. And again, another call without mentioning the Wii or the Wii U.
Yeah, that's true. True.
And
I would say majority of them did not.
Even if you look at, you can look at all aspects of all the calls that we'll be playing, but it strikes me that regardless of whether one's in favour of the other, when we talk about the major systems such as Xbox and PS3, that none of them are pushing the Wii or the Wii U.
Makes you wonder if Nintendo was to do like some calling around to these, Game and GameStop, Best Buy, all these places, they were to call around, and Nintendo would be like, well, let's see, none of them mentioned us.
And do you know what the worst thing is? You said you were looking to pick up a gaming console, and none of them asked you, whether it's for home or on the go. Mm-hmm. So again, somewhat showing fanboyism, because they're going on the assumption that you're going to buy one of the big home consoles. They're aligning themselves with PS3 and Xbox straight away.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, most of these questions I ask, I use the term specifically. I'll mention PS3 or Xbox, and then other ones I say console. Like I'll say which console I'm looking at to buy a console. Yeah. So it might not lead people towards thinking of the Vita, but it certainly doesn't leave out the Wii unless I mention PS3 or Xbox.
Yeah, but I mean the Vita is a console. The 3DS is a console.
Yep. They're
just portable. Do you know what I mean? And it strikes me that nobody even had the insight to ask you. And I will say this, that you played dumb during the calls, but even as, playing the dumb thing, nobody actually asked you what you want it for. Besides the game things, do you want to watch movies? Do you want to take it on the go with you? Do you want to, what is it you actually want?
Well, some do.
Or what you would like. Before sort of going down the route of, well, we have this model of Xbox, we have this model of PS3, and it's like, it just astounds me, it really does.
Well, let's listen to, this one's, I think she says a Sony kind of gal. So let's hear from a self-proclaimed Sony fangirl.
Okay. Personal preference-wise, I'm a Sony kind of gal, so I have a PlayStation. What I do, the console-wise, you're looking about the same price for the consoles. You can get an Xbox for $199, but there's no hard drive in it. It only has 4 gigs of flash memory. So if you're going to play like Call of Duty, if you're going to be playing Halo, that kind of stuff, you would need the 250 gig hard drive, and those start at $300.
Okay.
And then with the PlayStation, you can get them as low as $269.99 for a 250 gig hard drive, and they top out at $300 for a 500 gig hard drive. Reliability-wise, the PlayStation's got a longer shelf life.
Okay.
So, are you planning on doing any online play, that kind of thing?
Well, I'm not really sure. I don't really know about the game types. I've got a wide spectrum of kids, and that's why I was trying to figure out, kind of based on some of that. Like, which one's got better graphics?
Depends. The PlayStation the games are Blu-ray, so the graphics look great. But on the Xbox, there are more games that use full 1080p.
Okay.
So, it just depends what kind of TV you got, how you're hooking it up, if you're using HDMI, if you're using component if you're just going to use the regular AV cables. That way, let's see here, what else? Hidden cost-wise, the Xbox, if you guys are gonna game online, is $60 a year. The PlayStation Network is free game online, so you wouldn't have that cost.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that one's free game online. There is a premium membership through PlayStation. It's the PlayStation Plus program. That's $50 a year, but you get free games with that one, but you don't have to have that in order to game online. With the Xbox, you have to have a gold membership, which is the $60 a year, just to do Netflix and all that kind of stuff. But the PlayStation, you can do Netflix free of charge, and you would just pay Netflix for your subscription to Netflix.
Wow. Okay. That seems like a big difference in cost.
Yes, and a lot of it is also personal preference of, like, if your kids are going to be ones playing online, it's what their friends have. If they want to game with their friends, and they get an Xbox and friends on a PlayStation, or vice versa, it's going to be, they're not going to be able to game online with each other, because of course it's not the same server.
Okay. Now, how often do new models come out? Is it every year I get to upgrade and buy something new?
No, not every year. They did just release a new version of the PlayStation 3, the Super Slim, but all of the games work on any version of the PlayStation 3. The Xbox, a few years ago, released their Slim model. It fixed some of the bugs of the original launch model, but again, it's all the same thing. The new consoles will be launching this fall, though. That's something to consider as well.
Okay.
So, PlayStation has already said that they will be launching the PlayStation 4 in this holiday. We haven't released it yet. And then Microsoft is making an announcement actually on the 21st of this month about the new Xbox.
Cool.
So, you also need to look at the fact of, 9 months from now, or not even that, just over 6 months from now, there'll be a new version of it that you might need to upgrade to. So you might want to look at going like pre-owned with one of those two, because you'd save quite a bit on the price, especially if you're going to be doing upgrades.
Well, I mean, do you know which one's going to be better at that point? Is there one?
At that point, I don't know. It's just because we don't have any specs for the new Xbox.
Oh, okay.
Because they haven't, Sony already did their press conference announcement, and the PlayStation 4 looks amazing. But at the same time, Microsoft hasn't done their Xbox announcement yet. That doesn't happen for another 7 days, so we don't know.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
Were there any other questions that you had, or?
No, that's good. I was just trying to find out, get an idea of which one's better from somebody that, deals with them all the time. And
Oh yeah, definitely. And how old are the kids that are gaming?
I've got a wide spectrum. I've got some young teenagers, and I've got some as young as 6 years old, so I've got a whole range of
Okay,
kids.
a whole spectrum of it. See, there's more family-friendly titles in the PlayStation family than there are in the actual Microsoft. For the Xbox is very geared toward like first-person shooter, mature-rated military style games. And it's something else to consider if you might want to get online and look up like the game libraries just to see which one has more games that your gamers would be able to play.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I actually think that's probably one of the better ones.
Yeah, a little bit Sony fanboyism in there, I think.
There is that, but I mean, she, in some respects, she didn't let it get in the way of quite a lot of stuff that she was talking about. She was probably, I think, one of the only calls that I remember listening to that actually did didn't give you irrelevant information when it came to new consoles and stuff. She said, it is something you may want to consider. It wasn't overwhelming, if you know what I mean. It wasn't sort of like, don't buy a system now, it's really bad for games, blah, 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 blah. She said, that's obviously going to factor into your purchase.
Mm-hmm. You just like her because she said Sony kind of gal. You want me to hook you up with her number?
But, I mean, I still sort of scratch my head about that one. I don't even know why she needed to tell you that.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
It just seems... why do you need to tell somebody you're a fan of one or the other?
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're a customer. You just want to know what the best product's going to be. And you want to decide that based on the information that you're given. And and I've got to address this thing because this is the second call that happened here. what on earth are they going on about resolutions for? So infuriating, because we had this conversation the other day, didn't we? You know, because we were talking about like porting games across from different systems,
Yeah.
and one of the problems is that PlayStation 3 is 1080p native, but with ports they have to scale it down because they're only 720. The ports that come out are only capable of doing a maximum of 720. So the PS3 has to scale down from its native 1080p to 720, which is what causes the extra jagged edges and issues with some of the graphics. Whereas on the Xbox 360, all games are natively 720p, and the graphics card in an Xbox 360 actually upgrades that visual to 1080p, which is why multi-platform games look smoother on the Xbox 360, because it's upscaling as opposed to downscaling.
Yeah.
And the hardware does that in an Xbox, but the hardware doesn't necessarily do that on the PS3. So, an Xbox 360 doesn't natively do 1080p.
Yeah.
Stop telling people
well,
that.
the Xbox is for just shooters anyway.
Well, you know, she did say that, and from a bias point of view, I can kind of agree with her. But in fairness, she did sort of pull herself back from that and say to you, you know, go look at the catalogue of games that's available, and you know what sort of, you know, because obviously websites will have, you know, where you can search by age, and I thought that was quite good of her to actually, you know, say that was the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, she could speculate on what each system's better at for in terms of games, but you know, and I'm kind of glad as well. She did sort of, you did seem like it was cool was going to end because she didn't really have much more to say, and then she did sort of drag it back a little bit, which was good on her part, because she then started to ask more questions. You know, oh, who's going to be gaming on the system? You know.
Yeah. Well, I tried to, you know, I tried to peer in there and get a little bit of extra knowledge about what they've got to say about new consoles coming out. Obviously, we're close to that. You know, I made these calls about a week ago. You can tell that. But, you know, I don't want somebody to have a full conversation with me. I'm talking about which one to buy this time of year, a week before a press conference about Microsoft, and Sony's already done one, and to not even mention new consoles are coming out. To me, that's kind of an injustice. I can't see it. I mean, obviously, you would think they'd want to sell you a system now, and then be more than happy to sell you the new system when it comes out in the fall. But you know, are you thinking from the customer, or are you thinking about, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And I think, in fairness, she did a relatively okay job with covering that.
Yeah.
But again, you know, once again, another call. This is what the second or third one. Another call, and nobody asked you what your experience with games is today. You know, saying there's a press conference on Tuesday. You know, if you're new to gaming, that means nothing. You know, you don't know where to go and watch these press conferences. You don't know what it's like in terms of the gamers. You know, why on earth do you
don't own
see
a
what
console,
I mean?
but what kind of games do you play, so that we know?
No, but you understand what I'm saying. If say, for example, someone owned a PS1 but hasn't gamed since, you'd want to know that so that you could sort of make it relatable to the information.
Right, right. And then that's part of what's troubling about fanboyism is it comes from that point of you're putting your own info out there. You're putting it like you assume they have experience in gaming, you know. Well, what kind of games do you play? Well, I'm telling you I want to buy a console. You didn't ask me if I've ever played any games.
Yeah.
You know,
that's kind of a key
put yourself
point,
in the
really.
customer's shoes if you want to truly answer questions and get them on the right path. You know, it may require asking a few questions. So, On
It's
to this
bizarre
next one.
just thinking about it. It's just like, what if it was someone's grandparents, phoning up and saying...
Now, Sonny, what are you telling me here?
I tell you an interesting point before we go on to the other call. Do you know what the interesting thing is? Because nobody's asked you what your experience is, none of them have actually told you to come down to the store and to ask for that salesperson, or say, if you come down to the store, we actually have demo booths open and we can run
Well,
you through and
it's
test
funny.
out the features.
It's funny you say that because I did notice that, and I did have like one of my calls, and I refused to play it because it's so very long. I had a guy that he tells me about the both being perfect versions. He mentions paying for play on Xbox. He mentions the Blu-ray player, and then he just goes on and on about specials, about slims and colors and super slim this and deal this, and if it's used and percentages off, and it's one of those things. It was just like the guy went into like super sales mode, and it was like such a turn off. If I was looking at buying a system, or even if I had experience in gaming, any of the above.
If you're 40 years older, you'd be snoring down the phone.
Yeah, I was like, are you serious, dude? Just like, what are you? You like went off on this tangent. And this price, and that price, and this price, and this price. Like 10 minutes later, hello?
Coming to the fanboy things, it's interesting that people would rather spend 4 or 5 minutes giving their opinion than to ask the simple question of, have you played any of these systems?
Uh-huh. Hey,
Do
come
you
on
want to play them?
come on down to the
come
store.
on down and test them out.
Yeah, most of these places, most of these places have, you can actually try them in the store.
Exactly.
Most all of them.
If you're new to gaming and stuff, like you've never gamed before, that's a perfect opportunity for not only the salesperson to actually sell the products based on how the customer reacts to actually playing on the different things, but as an individual going into a game shop, you get the feel of the atmosphere, the brick and mortars, the buying the games, where you start to get more knowledge in terms of looking around and, the whole concept of pre-owned as opposed to new, and what extra bits
well,
you
that's
can
that's
get,
another important one. How much do games cost, we talk about the system, a person coming in with $300 to buy a system and then go, I need games for this. Oh.
Yeah.
The average game, costs about $60 for a new game, and then that's a perfect opportunity to mention, well, we have used games, and you don't always get them, right after they come out. They're not always available as a used title, but a week later you can come pick it up and save $20, blah blah blah. You're exactly right. I didn't have anybody say, hey, you can come down to the store and try the PS3 and try the Xbox and try the Wii. My name's so-and-so. Why don't you come down? Bring your kids. Let's show you what some of the games are. Show you what they cost. Show you what features.
We had this discussion about the PS Vita, and a while back, and when we did a PS Vita show, and we were like saying, well, what's one of the biggest problems when it comes to actually selling the Vita? And I still maintained back then that one of the biggest problems of selling the Vita is, you can show it as much as you want. You could write numerous reviews and videos and stuff, but the proof is in the pudding.
Yep, put it in somebody's hands.
Get it in someone's hands, because as soon as it's in someone's hands, that's when it starts selling itself. And I'm so shocked that, again, because you have such a competitive market now with Xbox, PS3, and Nintendo, although the competitiveness from the Wii U is still questionable at this moment in time, but the Wii U is one of those devices that you need to actually get your hands on to understand the concept, the thinking of why this console is for you. And it's the same with PS3 and Xbox 60, because, some of the salespeople have said that they're similar. I would probably not quite put it as that, but they both have, they both go either side of the line depending on which part of it you're talking about. And so in order for you to make the distinction between the two, you kind of need to go hands-on with it. Why should somebody go for a Move system as opposed to a Kinect when you haven't even tried either of them?
Yeah. And, really, a person could have their own, they could have their own trigger point that could be more important than anything. It could be, Blu-ray and all this other stuff sounds fine and great, and then they get there and go, you know what? I like to feel the Xbox controller in my hands more.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with that. It could be something as simple as that, where the
It's interesting you
hands-on.
mention that as well, because one of the things I've noticed in this country with our major chains at the moment is they're really pushing movies out. As in, it's now become a big thing that they're advertising everywhere. We now sell Blu-ray movies. And, all the conversations we've heard, they've gone on about Blu-ray and how great it is for games. Nobody's even mentioned the movie side of things. And that also has another impact, which is, okay, let's say you buy the PS3 over the phone. You say, oh, I'll have a PS3, send it to me, here's my card details, blah, blah, blah. You get it, you take it home, you get your free game and your years of PlayStation Plus or whatever. And then you stick a DVD in there and you think, it's okay, and then all of a sudden some sort of message pops up, or you're reading through the instruction manual and you go, this can play HD movies, but in order to play HD movies you need to buy Blu-ray movies. And then you realise, crap, I'm going to have to replace my entire DVD library with Blu-rays.
Oh, yeah.
And not one person mentioned that when talking about Blu-ray at all. And the same with the Xbox side of it. Nobody mentioned that you could buy a HD DVD extra drive, and that there are HD DVD movies still selling, even though it's a dead format.
Mm-hmm.
Should you want that? It's
Well,
and why did they not mention that? Because they were too busy giving their opinion as opposed to asking you about things that you wanted.
well, and Netflix was mentioned quite a bit, so.
But look at it from a stupid customer's point of view. Do you even know what Netflix is?
Yeah, that's true, but I think most people, like if this, the other thing is like, I know plenty of people that have went and purchased a Blu-ray movie player here in the U.S., and they paid more for their Blu-ray movie player than a PS3 cost.
Yeah.
That to me is sad. How about the other end of it? You work for, Best Buy or one of these places, and you're, a customer comes in, I want a Blu-ray player, and you take them over to the Blu-ray players, and they pay $300 for a Blu-ray player. That is just sad. Get a PS3. You've got some online functionality. If nothing else, you can get on home, and you can still play movies, and you can decide if you want to put Netflix and things on it, and buy games later on or whatever. And
Because, in fairness, that's how Sony marketed it the first time in the US when it came out anyway, as a premium Blu-ray player for less than $1,000, which at the time, Blu-ray players were like $1,000.
Yeah.
And although Sony's rightly sort of moved away from that marketing side of things, look at it from a Best Buy or Target point of view, that would do wonders for their sales.
Yep. Definitely. Ready for the next one?
Yeah, play the next one.
Let's do this.
Yes, sir. I'm looking at trying to figure out what kind of console I want to get, and I'm just kind of calling around to see if I can get some information on the PlayStation and Xbox, like which one's cheaper, which one's got better graphics, more reliable, that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, with both systems, as far as graphics go, they're almost identical. There's really not a huge difference that you can tell. Some games that are specifically made for the console, like Halo 4, looks amazing on the Xbox. And vice versa. God of War looks amazing on the PS3. Those are exclusive titles to each console, so they take a little bit more time with the graphics. As far as systems or games that are on both consoles, they look identical. You can really never tell the difference. With the PS3, it just plays Blu-ray movies, so that makes the hardware a little bit nicer than the Xbox 360, which just plays regular DVD. So, price point wise, they're very, pretty much the same. Are you looking to get one or the other? Or?
Well, I'd like to get something that's reliable. I've got a lot of kids, and I don't know what kind of games and stuff they might want to get, so I'm just kind of trying to find out, reliability, hidden costs. I heard something about coming out with new models every year, having to upgrade, that kind of thing.
Well, there's not new models every year. What they are is each manufacturer, both Sony and Microsoft,
are bringing out new systems this year. But it's the first time that we've seen new ones in 7 years. So it's not something that they update every year, as far as the hardware goes. Okay. So is there one that's more reliable in terms of that, like, lasts longer? No. I mean, the Xbox, the original 360 had some issues where a lot of them would, have problems. But they remodeled it about 3 years ago, and with those newer models, they're very reliable. So, and PS3 is very reliable also. Okay. Yeah, but no, the original Xbox 360 did have a lot of issues. But like I said, with the newer models, they fixed that issue. So, and there's no hidden costs, like internet-wise or anything like that, or having an internet modem in it? Sure. Well, all of the newer, units, both PS3 and 360, offer wireless, connection. You can also do a wired connection. To play games online on the Xbox 360, you pay for a service that they call Xbox Live, which allows you to play your games online, communicate with your friends, do a whole lot of other stuff like Netflix and, Hulu, Amazon Prime, that kind of stuff. PlayStation offers that same type of service, but their service is free. You don't pay for their online connection. So, there's a benefit and, good and bad sides about that too. So, okay. But yeah, they do offer, both, the same types of services. In my opinion, Xbox Live does run a lot better. I mean, you are paying for it. So they offer, a few more features that PlayStation doesn't. Plus, when you play online, it's monitored a lot more than, the PlayStation version. So, okay. You're paying for it. You're paying for the service. So, awesome. All right. Thank you very much for the help. I appreciate all the answers.
So,
Dear, oh dear.
started off.
I was
Started off
hoping
good.
they were going to get better.
And then went to a few more online features, monitored more. I don't know.
Dear, oh dear. Do you know, I'd love a career as mystery shopper because I'll tell you now. I'd just be like, no, fail, 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 fail.
Well, I think what would be more interesting is that if I had some recordings from in-store, because the other thing too is I think the in-store conversation's a lot different, which is, I like to think too, I've actually spent some time actually kind of pooling not only the phone conversations, but I've also asked to some of my kids' friends what they think of systems, and it's interesting the responses you get from that age, from in-store, from the phone, from things related to online with the website and PS3. It's varied, and you can definitely see just I don't know, a variety of opinions. I guess I would say.
Yeah, but what intrigues me about all this is that, from the sales point of view and the employment side of it, it's all sold on opinion and not fact.
Well, that's what I'd like to know. What are the online features that the Xbox has? What features do they have? Cross-game chat maybe. They don't have PlayStation Home. Nobody mentioned that.
They have group party where it doesn't matter whether you playing different games, you can obviously still chat, but we often think of cross-game chat as just talking to one other person, but when you're in a group party, you can actually have something like between 4 and 8 people in a group party chatting simultaneously. Well, all 8 people are playing different things. There's also,
Are you aware of how they're monitored more?
No, I don't think they are. The only thing I'm quite familiar with in terms of Xbox monitoring things is the usernames. A lot of people have been banned for having what are perceived as crude usernames, or ones that don't identify people's sexuality, which has always intrigued me as to why they do that. I mean, we see quite a lot of stupid names on PSN. that can be considered really offensive, but, you know, at the
Definitely.
same time, I would not take away that right from them because they still pay you for the system. You know,
Mhm.
if they choose to be idiots and be offensive, that's their choice. I choose to ignore them and enjoy my game. Whereas Microsoft, on the other hand, chooses to ban them outright. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, I know Xbox Live has other features. You know, being able to control the menu system through Connect and, you know, voice activation and all that stuff. It doesn't work as great as people think it might. You know, being able to watch Netflix with a group of avatars and stuff. Get all your mates' avatars, and you can watch a movie on Netflix and things together with all your little avatars. It's pretty cool. But, you know, I think part of the biggest problem is that, you know, since the beginning of this generation, there's no doubt about it, this generation's as evolved as the internet's evolved with things like Facebook, Twitter and all that. You know, more and more websites tailored to the gaming industry, where user content is key to having communities. And I think part of the problem comes from a majority of that. You know, people having an openness to state their opinions, but the problem is a lot of the time the opinions are stated as fact, and that annoys the crap out of me. It really does, because that's where it comes from. You know, people will then look at a forum and someone's opinion and take it as gospel, you know, and then they start to hate on a system and then forget, you know, why they, you know, forget to even go check out the system, let alone, you know, check into the facts of it.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's fair to say that, you know, in terms of whichever entertainment medium that you have, there's always going to be fanboys. Somewhere along the line, there's always going to be, whether it be your favourite show on TV, you could be a Walking Dead fanboy, for example. But I don't know, unlike a lot of those sorts of communities, again, the games industry is unique because you have fanboys warring, basically. Whereas someone who's a fanboy of The Walking Dead might not necessarily, you know, won't go into, I don't know, a Fringe forum and say Fringe is a load of rubbish, The Walking Dead's the best thing ever, and start a fight online in a forum. You know, yet that happens all the time in games, you know, games websites. We see it.
Why would you watch that show?
Yeah, you don't really see that, and it's like, you know, I've seen it on, you know, websites, some of the bigger websites that have an integrated community, even those, you know, parts of it are sectioned off into platforms. They still have a, you know, if you sign up to the website, you can comment on whichever platform section you want to, and you often see it now. Like, say for example, that website publishes a PS4 article that everyone's reading, and then you find like the first 50 comments of why do I even care?
Yeah, I have an Xbox. Why do I care about that crap?
And it's like you've taken the time to go out and start inciting other people.
Poke, flame.
Yeah, I just don't get it. Why is it we do that? And then you know, the detrimental effect is, as we've seen throughout them calls, you know, it starts creeping into the other areas of the industry. You know, and it's self-harming, really.
Now, you mentioned movies. Don't we see that across games a little bit as well? You know, you have your fanboys for Call of Duty and Battlefield, and
yeah, I was going to say that earlier. Actually, I think in some respects it's getting. You know, I said earlier at the beginning of the show that it's not as bad as it was in terms of. You know, you used to hear all the news reports. Such and such has been arrested for threatening somebody over Xbox Live and threatening to fly out to their house and beat them up or whatever. And, you know, PlayStation and Nintendo consoles have also
I still
been.
find that funny when people threaten people over the internet. It's like, wow. Yeah. Really?
But, you know, I will say it's not just XBLA. You know, that these things happen on other network platforms, including Steam.
Well, XBL's
PSN
monitored
and
more.
stuff, yeah. No, but I will say there's been occasions where news reports, you know, I don't want to say it's purely something you find on Xbox Live, because it's not. You will find it across the board with people threatening to beat people up online and stuff in it. But, when it comes to movies, it's not really, you can have a debate and agree to disagree. When it comes to gaming, you can have an argument that will go on forever.
Yeah, I don't know. Seems it seems almost nonsensical in many points. And how does a person navigate this? Do you think this is where we should rely more on what should be the expert with the phone calls that people at these brick and mortar answering the phone should have some better answers? If
I think so.
if you're looking to buy a system and you don't have information, where's the best place to find it?
I wouldn't say they necessarily need better answers. It's more customer service training.
Well, I'm saying, where do you think a person in today's world finds the answers to their questions? Do you think that do you think if you did an online search comparing the PS3 and Xbox that there's anything reliable?
No.
Because I really don't think there is. I really, it's always, a tech person's going to go with tech stats and all that other stuff. A person that's largely Xbox is going to lean towards Xbox issues and maybe not uncover everything about the PS3. Somebody that plays Xbox, even though they might know all kinds of things about the PS3, they've probably never played home.
Yeah.
They probably don't know what PlayStation Plus is about. They have no clue.
And this is kind of why I make a compelling case, because we see things like online game sales going up and up and up. I'd expect that from people who are familiar with their systems, driving those sales up. But I don't get the dwindling, pushing people through doors into brick and mortars, because that's really where you're going to bring new audiences into it. Nintendo in some respect was successful with that in terms of the Wii, because they got everybody talking about it. And again, with the Wii, in fairness, they did a great job in showcasing the product. People playing the product and going hands-on with it, and spreading it around. For the longest time, you couldn't. You'd find a Wii in every game shop for ages. And even now, I still see 3DS stands just for the original 3DS. And it surprises me that, when you talk about the bigger consoles and the big boys and the ones that charge more, and, who really drive the industry forward in innovation, why are they not doing that? If I want to know if an Xbox 360 is any better for my gaming needs than a PS3, why do companies that sell these things drive people to forums to have an argument over, technical aspects and room specs? Why are they not pushing them into stores with a Xbox kiosk right next to a PlayStation 3 one, and a Wii one, and a Wii U one, and a Vita one, and a 3DS one? Do you see what I mean? But I think you've also made a compelling point. I probably lost my chain of thought when I was answering it, but you're right in terms of, I said it's not so bad when it comes to console manufacturers as it used to be, but it is getting worse in other areas, because, as you rightly mentioned, there's now this blame war going on between brands within a genre. Call of Duty fans versus Battlefield fans. It's crazy. Why do you need to have this flame war between Call of Duty and Battlefield? They're both great games in their own respects, depending on how your opinion is.
We know The Walking Dead's better than both of them. You're like,
I mean, it's not a first-person shooter, so it's not comparable. But
the movie, the show. The show The Walking Dead is better than both Call of Duty and Battlefield put together.
Yeah.
Why?
So let's all debate let's all debate the Walking Dead episodes and stop fighting over Call of Duty and Battlefield. Yes. But no, my opinion would lie. I think Battlefield's better. Other people will argue that Call of Duty is better. I respect their opinion that Call of Duty is better, and if they want to spend 60 hours on it, That's their prerogative. I'm not going to sit in a forum and fight with them for days and threaten and so on to prove my point. I will rather go and fire up my Battlefield game and enjoy it.
I'd rather play them both at some point, see which one I like.
Simultaneously, like do split screen on your TV and just like
No, I don't know about
two
that.
controllers. Shows your mad skills, but
So-
I just
So
Do
with
we
the
need
coming
families?
Facebook integration,
Mm.
is that going to get worse? It's going to get worse, isn't it? Before it gets better.
I don't know. It remains to be seen, really. If I'm honest, I'd be
Or let
sceptical that
diffuse
it
it.
probably is, but in fairness, I don't think Facebook is the greatest thing to measure it by, if it's getting worse or not, because you see just general hate and love on Facebook in one status, let alone 50 people posting what they're doing on PSN. So
Sony should make some kind of setup with.
advertising campaign, make love not war.
No,
play
how
games,
about
not-
how about this? Have each one of these stores, allow for a person to get a trial. Take the PS3 home, plug it in, keep it for a week, couple games, bring it back
I don't
after a
know
week.
about a week, but I would certainly like to see Sony push the system and Microsoft push the system with workable demo cubes.
Just think if they did that.
I think the biggest problem with the Vita, as I said before, is it's not in people's hands. I think the only time I've ever seen anybody in my local game store with a Vita was 4 weeks prior to Vita's launch. There was a guy having they had a sign up on the counter that said, if you want to try the Vita, ask now. And they would get it out from lock and key. And then on Vita launch day, one guy had it wrapped around his neck on a chain and didn't even have it switched on or wasn't playing it. And yes, obviously I know if you're employed to sell games, you don't want to be seen playing games, but it would have had a lot more enthusiastic appeal if they could see a member of staff actually playing a game and enjoying it. Do you see what I mean, though?
Yeah.
Otherwise, what was the point of him wearing one round his neck if he's A, not playing it and showing he's having a good time, and B, not letting other people play it and see it?
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's probably a no-no for most stores. Have your boss come in and there you are.
Yeah, but we talked about this when we talked about the engagement with the gaming community, and we talked about the whole online versus, brick and mortar sales, and as we said back then, they need to evolve, and some of those things are key to the success of the business, but at the same time it would go a long way to cut some of this crap out.
Yeah.
Because you see, and I make this compelling case, if the new consoles are going to be more socially based, I've read numerous articles that make a compelling case as to why this might actually cut some of this fanboyism crap out, because you're able to share videos to show how good a game is. You're able to offer your thoughts in real time on the game and share it with the world, and it's more about your thoughts, supposed on the game that you're playing there and then, as opposed to your perceptions of what the game might be. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, if you're playing Knack, for example, and having a really good time with it, you could just say,
Lift
I'm
you up.
having a great time with it, here's a video, go and have a look at it. It's amazing. And the same with Xbox, and, they could do a similar kind of thing with whatever's coming on tomorrow. I'm surprised Nintendo don't really do that much.
Yeah.
I would like to have seen them do a little bit more with that with the Wii U. I think people are still confused over the whole two-screen system.
Definitely. It's one of those things like, that's a jump from Wii owners. You're looking at it going, okay, well, how does this work? And there's not really too much information. And as we clearly pointed out, it's not something that local game shops are going to stop and explain it. Well, let me show you this, and let me explain the two-screen system. And
I don't think they realise how important it is in terms of sales and the overall opinion, because I saw something on Twitter this morning where it was rumoured that something like only 40,000 Wii U's have sold in the US this month. That's a terrible figure. But, you know, if you're looking at it from a fanboy's perspective, you're going to go, oh yeah, the Wii U's crap because it's only selling 40,000. It's rubbish, nobody wants it.
Well,
But actually
most
the
places
reality
don't
of
have
it
the upsell.
is-
They don't have the upsell down though. I mean, you that's most retail locations don't have the upsell in mind. They don't have the.
Yeah, but the reality of it is the Wii U's got a misrepresentation. So, you know, just because it's sold 40,000 doesn't necessarily mean it's a crap system. The same with the Vita. The Vita doesn't do ecstatic numbers every month in terms of sales because it's a slow seller. But, you know, I wonder if, you know, certainly businesses that are supposed to be making money out of selling these systems cut out some of the fanboy crap and, you know, gave a positive reception to certain things and were feeding back to actual manufacturers as well, because we don't really hear much about it. All we hear about when we talk about the big game companies that are selling games to the general public, because obviously the publisher sells them to the game stops and games of this world, but you know, they keep track of their own sales. But it would be nice if, you know, say for example, GameStop were taking feedback and saying, well, you know, we haven't sold this many Wii U's because of this reason. Our customers say this. Here you go, Nintendo. Go work on it. Do you see what I mean, though?
Yeah, yeah.
There's no feedback, and so they're then relying on, you know, people who have the system telling the manufacturers directly over social channels like Facebook, and then that's when you get some of the fanboyism creeping. And then, you know, you could say it's arrogance on the manufacturer's part, but they'll just switch off onto those sort of things. They'll go, oh, we can't really take this feedback seriously because it's not reliable. Because it's just people sounding out over social channels and fanboys and all that. And it's like, well, actually, you have the avenues, you have the resources, if only you utilise them rightly to cut this crap out. Because it does need to stop. It really does. You know, and it's one of the biggest cons we've had this generation.
Well, I think too. You know, you're going to see. You know, I don't know. I mean, you're going to see a little bit of fanboyism anyway for most everybody. I mean, I hate to say it like that. I want to make a distinction in my mind. Fanboyism doesn't necessarily always mean fighting.
Yeah.
People are going to tout stuff that they like. That's always going to be, you know, if you're a fan of baseball and you don't like soccer, you know, football.
Why not?
Well, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that, like, when you're speaking about it, that you're not going to talk it up and say, you know, this is great and this is great and this is great. And then the other one, you might say some things that you don't like, but again, it goes back to what you're saying about it's an opinion, and that's really where you got to separate. Fanboyism can be, you know, it can be based on facts, it can be opinion, but it all relates to how you feel about it. And it's not so much, you know, I guess it's okay, I would say, to say I like this feature, and I think Xbox has this, and that's why I like it, as opposed to going in and actively hating on the other system.
Yeah.
Because that's where you need to draw the line. It's like when somebody just starts saying, like, oh, that system's crap, and blah, 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 even if they've got a, this is why I think that, it's like, why are you even wasting your energy to dislike
go out
something?
of your way to go into a specific forum that's based on fans of this particular product, and
well, even if it's not, you know, I mean, you know, I think, you know, like I would say, I'm a little bit of a PlayStation fanboy. I like the features on the PlayStation. I obviously own one of those over an Xbox, but at the same time, you know, I think that you can clarify and say, you know, certain things I don't know. You know, is the Xbox monitored more? You know, I would like that. If the connectivity is better, you know, I've played on both. I haven't noticed a difference. You know, I do have problems with connectivity sometimes on the PlayStation. So am I to say, well, maybe the Xbox is, and if I gave it a shot, and maybe the system does work better because I pay for the gold membership. Maybe if I was exposed to that, maybe I would say I like the Xbox Online better because I am paying for it and it is better. It is monitored more. I don't have to see those, hateful usernames. It's your exposure level, and I think as long as you direct it in the right way and say, I feel this way, I feel that way, without putting hate on it, because most often, it's from a point of you just don't know,
No.
and there's nothing worse than that. I hate the Xbox. I've never played it, but I hate it. The PS3 is better.
Yeah. See, I mean, my stance on it is, I'm invested with Sony. I'm obviously going to be a Sony fan. Boy, I have mutual respect for whichever gaming system you own. As long as you get enjoyment out of it, and if you prefer certain games, that's fine. I will probably say that I'm guilty of being a bit flippant when it comes to Call of Duty. But I openly admit it. I wouldn't say I hate people because they play Call of Duty. I would say I'd strongly disagree with them. But when it comes to the system side of things, I don't hate Microsoft at all. I have respect that they have a unique, huge selling system of managed to turn it around from what the original Xbox is, and it's a good bit of kit, as opposed to what it was when it first launched. What I will say is that I do... I feel very strongly, certainly, against how Microsoft, not the hardware and stuff, but Microsoft as a company have influenced some of the business practices over the years. That's really where I have an issue with it, but at the same time I can, if I'm having a discussion with somebody about it, I can agree to disagree and walk away. I'm not going to hate people because they want to have that discussion with me.
Yeah.
I can concede that, if we're never going to agree, that's fine, and walk away from it. And I think, why should people go hating other people's way of enjoyment? Should it really matter?
Uh-huh. At the end of the day, it's like, they're gamers, you're gamers. Don't we have enough with people that are non-gamers, kind of like ragging on the gamer?
Down. Yeah. Yeah.
You do what? You play video games?
And
but you're 41.
That brings up another interesting point, is that, one of the things I think's universal throughout the games industry is that, they want the games industry to grow up. We want the better experiences. We want the growing up things. We want to be seen as a growing up industry all round, And how can the games industry and gaming fans make a compelling case that games are for all ages and that it's a grown-up industry and accepts what it is, when at the end of the day,
childlike behavior? Yeah, I know what you're saying.
On a daily basis, coming from both, not just fans of particular systems, but employees of companies that sell products, and in some cases even the developers and publishers themselves. We've seen the petulance even go as far as with the whole EA Activision thing, Call of Duty Battlefield 3 thing going on, and we've seen it with Microsoft and trying to goad Sony with the Forza versus GT thing. Do we really need that? Do we need any of it? I think it's hypocritical for the entire industry to make that case of being grown up. I do like visionaries like David Cage who make really good points to showcase that we are a grown up industry. There are a lot of grown ups within it. We want to evolve, we want to be taken seriously, but then all their hard work is undervalued by all this, crap that doesn't even need to happen.
Yeah.
And that's disappointing.
Indeed. So, well, it's been an interesting study. I like how, we heard from a variety of, employees, and I think as we're going forward, I think we all need to be more just fans of being gamers. I think just being gamer fanboys, because we're moving into that, like you say, where for me, I notice a lot more games on phones and tablets and all these kind of things, and those are not the same kind of games as console games, even PC games and stuff. They're not as developed most of the time. They're not as involved. Yet we're pulling in a whole new generation, if you will, of gamers, and it'd be nice if we could get them together into kind of admitting that they're gamers and admitting that gaming is an important part of entertainment.
Yeah.
It's not a segment. It's not a kid thing. It's we talked about the average age of gamers and stuff before, and it's getting up there. And I can remember maybe 10 years ago where I felt old for being a gamer at my age. And now I'm coming into the thing where it's really almost humorous, where I can remember my parents saying, "Well, you sure play a lot of games, is that you're gonna spend all your time playing on the PlayStation, blah blah blah." And now it's like I go over there and Mom spends a couple hours on Facebook and Dad spends a couple hours on the Wii, and just kind of like, "Are you kidding me?" And they're in their 70s. And how do you attribute that to not integrating them from all these other ways, from the phone games and the Facebook games and stuff like that? I mean, it's clearly where they came from. It's clearly led them into it. And even if they don't realize it, they are gamers. They are part of the gaming community. So.
And the last thing they're going to want is if, for example, Grandad wants to go and look something up about new games on the Wii, he's having to gets on his computer, looks up a Wii thing, looks at a review, and the first thing he sees is 50 hateful comments towards the Wii.
Yeah.
As an older person, I'd probably just go, yeah, and switch off the computer and go back to my Wii.
Yeah, definitely.
But, the interesting thing is that, regardless of which system you go in the next generation, we have to accept there's so many challenges still yet to overcome in terms of, from both the industry's perspective and gamers' perspective. We've already seen, from the announcements regarding next generation consoles, there's going to be a lot to get to grips with. A real, change in development ethos that's really going to affect everyone, regardless of which console you have. And I'd rather, we all move forward and embrace the changes in terms of, evolving the whole thing, because in the 15, 16 years the games industry has really been on fire. Do we really want to go into the next evolution of that being dragged back by something as stupid and unnecessary as this?
Yeah.
No, I don't. I really don't.
So you heard it here first. Fanboyism is out. We're calling it quits. Everyone stop.
You get a clean slate when the next set of consoles come out.
Yes, I'm looking forward to hearing about the Xbox tomorrow evening or tomorrow afternoon. Less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
So, it's whether you're a PlayStation fan or not, I can say, I firmly believe we need as many, consoles out there, and it's competition. It's
drives down prices.
Drives down prices. The more they go head to head and try and dream up features to beat out the competition, the better it is for all of us.
Yeah.
So.
You should embrace those as well.
Indeed.
Maybe we should talk a little bit about what's going to happen tomorrow.
Go for it. You want to talk about the video that was released?
No, I wasn't talking about that specifically, but yeah, we can talk a little bit about that if we've got the time.
We've got a little bit of time.
Well, I don't know if you're listening to this now, do check on the front homepage of the website. We have actually put a teaser trailer, which is interesting, actually.
It's like a lot of vents.
Yes, there is that, but obviously you've got to bear in mind that, you know, Sony have probably done that for two reasons, which is, you know, it surprises me actually, because I don't think any of us saw us, you know, we know we're going to see PS4 at E3 is a given,
Yeah.
but to start teasing it this a little bit early, the day before Xbox Live, yeah.
I wonder if there's a reason for that.
Well, the funny thing is, you know, and I
Good
was thinking
timing.
about this, you know, the video is extremely intriguing. It's enough to grab people's attentions, regardless of which system you associate yourself with. And what's interesting about it is if you go on Twitter now, hashtag PS4 is trending like crazy, right? What I'm confused about a little bit is if you're Microsoft and you're about to have a big press conference and you see something like that trending on Twitter, why aren't you doing anything?
Oh, I guess they're waiting to bust it out.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's only 24 hours, but we had this conversation before when we talked about, you know, why have a press conference 2 weeks before E3? And it seems they're doing even more damage to themselves because of something as simple as a 39-second video. I say to people, go and watch this video on the front page, regardless of which system you associate with, because it is very much like when we first saw the video for the Sony press conference announcement that they were going to do one in February, and it's got that very makes your hairs tingle. There's a air of excitement. It gives you just enough, a little glimpse that you really want to know more. And you see some intriguing things, and it gets you questioning. You think, well, I can't really wait. And then you realise there's a Microsoft thing tomorrow, and you think, how are they going to top that? So it'd be interesting to see it. But tomorrow we're going to do a special PodStation, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, indeed.
I think we're still on for that. So we're going to... I think KD's going to watch it live. Fortunately, I've got other commitments. But I am going to try and keep up to date with all the information that comes through. And then we're going to come on and talk about it at about 10 o'clock GMT plus 0, which is about 5 o'clock your time, something like that.
Yep, indeed.
Yeah. So we will have a special edition of the PodStation just purely for that. And it'll be interesting to do a contrast between the last special PodStation we did, which is obviously on PS4.
Indeed, indeed.
Be interesting to see the reactions.
Yeah. You think we're going to get a bigger reveal?
To be honest with you, I think, you know, Sony's marketing aspect of the original PS4 announcement is a great idea. The way they've carried it through over the months has been fantastic, and you know, long
Well,
way.
that's leading people to believe that Microsoft needs to put a little bit more into.
Yeah, and I'm kind of, you know, I'm looking at this press conference because I really want to see, you know, and I think regardless of which fan of a system that you are, it probably will get a lot more attention because of what Sony have done. You know, that's not necessarily negative, and you know, Microsoft will probably feed off that. But I do wonder with some of the stuff tomorrow that we may get sidetracked by some of the other attractions, because if you look at what Sony did with the PS4 announcement, it was like it's a PS4. They didn't say it was a PS4, you know, they've got this mysterious thing, and they showcased a lot of things that we didn't even know were coming. Do you know what I mean? It was really full of surprises and developers coming on stage. And then you go to like the Xbox, you know, the Xbox Facebook page, for example, and you'd expect them to be teasing images or teasing the things. And the first thing you see is Call of Duty announcement reveal at Xbox press conference. You know, they're relying on a third-party brand to promote people to come and see it. You know, where was the... so I think more people are going to watch it because of things like Call of Duty. The interest in Call of Duty is extremely high regardless of which platform you own. And so I think they're going to drag in an audience from that. But at the same time, they've missed a trick by teasing out what's actually going to make the Xbox special. And, you know, Sony didn't fall into that trap with the PS4. They... press conference, they were kind of teasing things out, but then they filled it with so many surprises, and they had their big names there as well. And you know, it worked for them. I don't think it's necessarily going to work by getting a big brand name to promote the Xbox thing.
Yeah.
But it will be definitely interesting. I think a lot of people, regardless of platform, are going to be tuning in to see this. Because I think the other aspect of it is that obviously we can safely say we now know PS4 is going to blow people's minds. And they set a benchmark, and I think people, even if they're already committed to buying a PS4, are going to be looking at the Xbox side of things thinking, how can Microsoft top that? Because we even said that on the special show that we did. We came out of it and we looked at it objectively. You know, we looked at the positives of the announcements, we looked at the negatives of the announcements, but we still felt that afterwards, regardless of which system we own, we still have said afterwards, it's like, how can you top that? We found ourselves scratching our heads. We couldn't have any answers, and I don't know if a Call of Duty is enough to top it.
Guess we'll have to find out.
Yep. What time is the press conference tomorrow?
Is it noon? 1 o'clock, something like that. It's in the afternoon. Here, my time, it's in the afternoon.
Yeah. So what would that be, GMT?
I don't know, 5, 6 o'clock, something like that, maybe.
Yeah, well, I'd say it's probably going to be about 5, 6 o'clock, as you say. So if you do want to watch the press conference live, I'm sure Katie will sort something out in the forum that we can get live streaming there on the site. And, just for, fairness, we should probably point out that the press conference is being streamed on www.xbox.com as well. So you can go and check it out there as well.
Huh. Sony's not streaming it?
No, surprisingly enough.
Alrighty, well, I don't think we'll be doing a live tomorrow. Are we going to do a live tomorrow? Maybe. I'll leave that up to you.
See. We'll see.
We'll see. But anyway, join us, what would be 26 hours from now, somewhere around there.
Something like that.
Of course, by the time you listen to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking
so
forward to it.
If you're listening to it this evening, we'll see you again in 26 hours. If you're not listening to this till the end of the week, then you've already missed out everything. So to cover our asses on that, make sure you check out the special. Make sure you check out the special thing, and obviously we'll see you back again next Sunday.
Indeed,
as usual. Hopefully, fingers crossed, all being well.
Indeed.
Cool.
Any final comments?
Nope. I just want to hear this outro music and get feedback on the whole music that we've incorporated into the show. Because
yes.
My dad's willing
please,
to know.
Please give some feedback.
Yeah.
On these things. I'd like to hear your thoughts on fanboyism, and just fanboyism overall. We don't want to hear your fanboyism. What you think about systems or anything like that.
Yeah.
Feel free to share that after we have the press conference, and share your thoughts on that. But I want to make that clear. I don't want to start any arguments or fights about which is better, whichever you like, or anything like that, because I really don't care. My opinion's what matters to me.
And nobody else. So you lot.
It's opinions are, like what they say, that old saying. Anyway.
Yeah. I know what you mean.
Alrighty. So that's it. Peace out, right?
Yeah.
And
Sure.
as well, Daryl's podcast will be coming
Oh yes.
Wednesday. So we'll have
Trophy Lounge episode 3.
3 days in a row. Right there. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah. Sport this week.
Spoil.
Good music, good conversations, exciting announcements.
Alrighty.
Episodes. All good.
We will see you when we see you. Take care now. Bye-bye.